are going from virality to transparency. We have Rick Wion. He is now at Kellogg's, and before he was at McDonald's, that's where I know him from. And he's kind of the go-to guy with anything that was new and innovative in social media. So it's no surprise that now he's at Kellogg's working on something that it shouldn't be cutting edge, but it really is. It's a huge company opening its doors to transparency, especially these days when everyone's questioning brands and the content of their food and whatnot. So, Rick, I will pass it over to you. I'm going to hand you this mic. This is so yes, that can pick you up. And thank you very much. Everyone give him a big hand.
Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks. It's hard to follow Emerson. That was really cool. So I'm here today to talk about transparency. And what I think transparency is really interesting, a really interesting topic, because it's one of those things that no one is really against it. But when it comes to actually doing it and living it as a brand, as a corporation, it's really, really hard to do. I kind of think of it, it's like a campaign promise. You know, no politician is going to say they're against education, yet they're not all necessarily voting to fund education. And so we see a very similar thing in terms of transparency. And I'm going to talk about transparency through two programs, so work that I did at McDonald's and then also work that I'm doing now at Kellogg. So quick background with me, I've been working at Kellogg's since January this year, so I'm almost 1 year in. Before that, I spent 5 years at McDonald's where I was head of social communications for McDonald's US. Before that, I was at Golan Harris at the agency for 4 years, so I've got a bit agency and brand side of things. And so I started working in social media way back in like 2006 or so. I remember that's when we were doing some of our first blogger campaigns. It was interesting. Walk in here for breakfast, I see Fiber One bars. I pitched to a guy at General Mills to do a blogger outreach campaign for Fiber One bars back in 2006. So it's like, oh wow, it's a little trip down memory lane there. So. The reason that McDonald's and the reason that Kellogg's have both embraced transparency is that, quite simply, people want to know what's in their food. Think back, the paleo diet is a big trend right now. Real cavemen, if you handed them food, they're going to eat it. They're not going to ask any questions about it. Now, if you hand somebody some food, they're going to be like, is this gluten-free? Does this have peanuts in it? What about dairy? I'm lactose intolerant. How many calories are in this? Was the chicken humanely raised? What was his name? And so in the time at McDonald's, we saw this again and again and again. One of the number one questions that we would see on Twitter, what's in a chicken nugget? Chickens aren't shaped that way. Where does it come from? And so we saw at the time, and still, that this huge consumer trend of people want to know what's in the food. So, wow, lightning flash, we should just tell them what's in our food. So very simple concept, but also not necessarily as easy as it would think to actually start doing that. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about how we've done that between the two companies, and then also give a little bit of the why we started doing that in the first place. So transparency is more than a marketing trend. All kinds of different companies are embracing the notion of transparency. One company that's not on here that I actually like to give a lot of credit to is BP. They went through one of the worst crises that you can imagine for a company ever. They have also been very transparent, though, in terms of their recovery efforts and what they're doing to bring the Gulf back to the way it was before. So, not a great situation, but very forward in terms of how they're talking about it. Well, the reason that transparency is important because consumers want companies to be transparent. Lots of research out there. At Kellogg's, I work with Edelman. They've done a lot of tremendous research demonstrating that consumers reward companies that demonstrate an openness and transparency. And they reward them in multiple ways. They're more likely to buy products from the company. They're more likely to defend those companies. They're less likely to bag on those companies when something goes wrong as well. And as we all know in social, that's a very, very important thing to have. So the impact of this is happening because trust in U.S. institutions is falling right now. This is some of the, this is the Gallup poll. Edelman also has some brand trust work that's on this. Probably can't see in the back here, the military. People trust the military. People trust police. People trust teachers. People trust farmers. What they don't trust, Congress, the news, organized labor, newspapers. They don't trust agriculture, which I think is really interesting. There's a lot of questions about agriculture. A friend of mine who's a farmer, he says, people hate farming, but they love farmers. And so it's just the trust in how people understand and believe stories is really changing. The way that this manifests in terms of how companies operate. Another study looked at consumer survey of companies that you trust and companies you don't trust. What types of actions have you taken in the past 12 months? And again, this shows that people who trust companies are more likely to buy their products. They're more likely to recommend them to friends. On the opposite side, if you don't trust a company, then you're less likely to recommend them to friends. And as we all know, the recommendations of friends are very, very important. The two most important influencers for consumers are your friends and family and strangers on the internet. And the more that you can build up your trust through social tools, the better off your organization will be. So consumer expectations are evolving too. Another bit of research, 68% of people think that companies should be more open and transparent about how they operate and who they are, yet only 15% of people think companies actually do that. So that huge gap presents a major opportunity for lots of different types of companies. So another reason that transparency is important is that people, in their growing expectations of what companies do, they have more relationships with companies as well. The value exchange in consumer purchase isn't just about getting a product for a good price anymore. People want to feel good about their purchases. Just like Emerson said before, a lot of times you buy something not necessarily because you need it, it's because it will make you look cool, it will make you look smart, it will make you look trendy. As much as I love Tom's shoes, I think a lot of people buy Tom's shoes because they want to look like they're very conscious about how they're consuming things. So the organizations and companies that can meet those relationships, that you offer good value, that you can build trust in companies, the more that companies that do this, the better that they will perform. So take all these things together. If you meet the rational needs of your consumer and you meet their emotional needs, you make them look smarter, and you meet societal needs, you're doing something good for the planet or for your industry, then all your scores in terms of brand trust, brand loyalty, brand purchase, they will go up. This is also important for employee relationships as well. And this is something that I've seen both at Kellogg's and at McDonald's, is that employees want to know what's going on within a company as well, especially large companies. Kellogg's is 30-some thousand people. Not everybody knows what's going on all the time. And so employees want to hear from other employees to know what's going on in the company. Employees are more credible, too. Another bit of research from that Gallup, military is the most trusted, Congress is the least trusted. Within an organization, your CEO is actually near the bottom in terms of trust that people have. If you've got an issue, you got to put the expert who knows about that issue, even if it's a mid-level manager person. They're the ones who are going to have the most credibility. Analysts are also looking for these trust factors as well. They're constantly reading information about companies, looking for that next tip, that next leg up. And then trust also impacts your business. Really good book, if people are looking for some reading, called Trust or Consequences, written by Al Golan, looking at how companies can build trust. And how the more you build up trust, it not only helps your sales, when there's a crisis, your dip isn't going to be as bad. Okay. Also, board reviews. At both McDonald's and Kellogg's and another company I've worked at, the board of directors is looking at risk in terms of public perception of trust within company. So it's something that trust starts at the bottom, is going all the way to the top. Okay, so that's a bit about why transparency is important. Transparency is your proxy to build up trust within your company and your brand. So, but as I mentioned before, it's easy to say and easy to do. Yes, we're going to be transparent. We're going to tell our customers everything. But sometimes it's actually hard to do. And so what I'm going to present to you today is a simple 11-point step for how to make this real. It was going to be 12 steps, but then I felt that was feeling a little too much like therapy. But what I will tell you is, in this effort here, I'm going to go through and talk about pull out mini case studies of the work that we're doing at Kellogg's. and look at, there's actually 8 things that you need to do within an organization, and there's 3 things you need to do as an individual within this to make transparency real at a company. So number 1 is you need full commitment across the entire organization. And when I say this, everybody, a lot of people need to be on board. Leadership has to be there, supply chain, public relations, IT, customer service, operations, legal, government relations. These are all parts of the transparency team that I work with at Kellogg's. They are also part of the transparency team that I worked with at McDonald's. Why all these folks? Because there's no single person inside any company that's going to know everything that's going on. I talked about that example. People would constantly ask on Twitter, hey, what's in a chicken nugget? Well, I could point to the ingredient list and tell you what's in a chicken nugget, but that doesn't necessarily explain the whole thing. I go to somebody in supply chain and say, hey, what's in a chicken McNugget? And they say, well, I'll tell you what's in my part of it. And then there's procurement who buys the chicken. There's a menu team who develops the recipe. There's the product manufacturer who actually makes the food. Those are 4 different entities that even though they work together, there's no single person that has the answer to that. And that's within a chicken nugget, but there's a lot of examples like that within companies where you have experts within certain areas who know their area but can't tell you necessarily a full story or answer the full question that a consumer might ask. On top of that, even if they could tell you a lot, most of the full question, these experts might be scientists. They're the folks who might not necessarily be able to tell you something in a consumer-friendly voice that you want to get back out to your people. So, with this commitment, it's a real commitment. It's something that you have to say, okay, we're going to do this, or we're not going to do this. It's not like Kellogg's is going to say, oh, you know what? We answered a question about GMO, and then somebody freaked out online, so now we're not going to talk about that anymore. We just don't have that option. It doesn't work that way. And so when this commitment says, when an organization says, yes, we're going to be transparent, we're going to tell everybody what's in our food and why it's in our food and where it comes from and how it's shipped and who grows it and everything else, well, we're going to start doing that, and we can't stop doing that because that will just sink the trust faster than anything else in the world. Leadership needs to be champions. The former CMO of McDonald's, Neil Golden, he was a big champion of the Our Food, Your Questions program that McDonald's launched. And as we were developing that, he would say constantly, all right, we got to be open and honest, but let's not lead with our chin. And so how do you construct a program where you're communicating with consumers in a way that you don't lead with your chin? You don't give them opportunities to just turn around and bash you. There's no simple solution for that. A lot of it is determining how do you want to construct your communications program? Who are you going to take questions from? Who are you going to answer? As much as I will be the proponent to say transparency for a company is a good thing, it doesn't mean that you're opening up a forum for all your haters to come in and bash you and you just have to take it. If somebody's being rude, you don't necessarily have to answer that question. That's just, as a business, you get to choose that. It's hard to get leadership to be a champion, though, because trust is a very squishy metric. There's no Google report that will show you here's how much trust consumers have in your product. Wish there was. If they develop it, I'll be the first one to buy it. In fact, I'll talk a little bit more about measurement later. In the program that we measure at Kellogg's, we are tracking no less than probably 50 or 60 different metrics on how our campaign is working, how this platform is performing. But no single one says, okay, now today we've sold more cereal because more people trust that we are responsibly sourcing corn from Iowa. It just isn't there. But at the same time, if you look at all the consumer trend work that I showed before, that's what we use to get the CEO on board, to get other leadership people on board to say, yeah, you know what, I see these consumer trends, I see where this is going, and this is something that we need to do. And so we need to understand, all right, how do we work within that space of we can't prove it, we have squishy metrics that don't tie directly to sales but there's this obvious consumer trend. And getting your leadership, having those very critical conversations with them is how we got this launched at Kellogg's, it's how we got this launched at McDonald's. And it was a single conversation, months and months of conversation. In fact, at McDonald's, our transparency program was about 18 months in the making before we went into production with any content at all. It just took that long to get all of our resources marshaled. So you also need a robust internal network. As I mentioned before, there's lots of different folks that are involved in the program that I work on at Kellogg's. There's three main components. So I sit within communications, but I have team members in marketing and customer service who are also part of the team. We work with experts in philanthropy, CSR, sustainability, nutrition. We then tap people, supply chain, R&D, quality assurance, and legal. So on any given day, I'm talking to literally 15 different people about answering one consumer question, such as, hey, where does the corn and cornflakes come from? I got a whole swath of folks that I need to do. So this means that not only do I need to build a network of folks internally who are my subject matter experts and who can help us fine-tune these messages, I need to have a system where I can communicate with them very, very quickly and get after some of these answers. One thing actually that would probably help illustrate all this, I know a lot of people have your laptops out right now. If you go to openforbreakfast.com, that's the main program that Kellogg's is using right now to demonstrate and talk about our transparency. So transparency also requires a big effort in alignments between communications and marketing. Because what we're doing, the conversations we're trying to spur with consumers, it's partially communications and PR, it's partially marketing, it's both. It's funded through both areas. So both of those teams have skin in the game too. So openforbreakfast.com is our main hub. That's where a lot of these stories start. On Open for Breakfast, this is our program where we're communicating what Kellogg's is doing in the areas of nutrition and sustainability and corporate giving and philanthropy. Because when we were setting up this program, did a lot of research to say, when it comes to food and it comes to cereal and breakfast, what are people most concerned about? Well, they want to know the nutrition of the food. Okay, how much sugar is it? If you're a diabetic, we get a lot of questions from diabetics on how much sugar is in which cereal and portion sizes. People want to know about sustainability. So is it responsibly grown? Is it responsibly sourced? Is it from the US? Is it from overseas? How is it grown? A lot of questions on palm oil. Now, Kellogg's has a great commitment for sustainable palm oil, so we're in a really good space there, but people still know that palm oil is having issues with rainforest destruction, so want to be careful about buying that. The third area is corporate giving. So openforbreakfast.com is the hub where we tell these stories. And our storytelling happens in two ways. One is we're publishing stories, all kinds of different content. So videos, interviews with experts within our company and third-party experts as well, infographics, visual headlines. We publish all those on the website. We also have a Q&A function where we encourage consumers to ask us questions. And literally is, ask us anything you want to know about cereal. Quick, somebody ask me something about cereal. Yes, Fruit Loops are round. I've actually seen how Fruit Loops are made. It's really cool. They take wheat and basically turn it into like a flour, and then make like pasta. They make little rings, and they pop it like popcorn. That's how it gets so airy and crunchy. So that's part of my job, too. I have to learn a lot about cereal. It's good having two little boys because they challenge me on this stuff all the time, too. So it starts on openforbreakfast.com. We push it out through our many channels that we have. So we feature it on boxes. We share it with employees. We push it out through search. We push it out through our emails. Social is huge for us. Not surprisingly, we're going to get more people looking at our content through our Facebook pages and Twitter pages than we will ever get to our website. One video that we had, we're more than 1.5 million views on Facebook in 1 month alone. Not quite that many people to our website, which is fine. I don't care where people consume the content as long as they see the stories and somewhere. So this alignment, as you can imagine, marketing PR people aren't always on the same page. So it takes some time to get that alignment and strike that balance as well. Okay, support from customer service. This is huge. This is an important part of the program at Kellogg's and at McDonald's as well. That question and answer form that I mentioned, we're getting hundreds and hundreds of questions coming in to there through that form. Well, our consumer affairs team, customer service team, they're the ones who help us answer those questions. I mean, it makes sense. They're the ones who've been answering consumer questions for decades. They're especially used to dealing with consumers who might be a little bit upset about something or want to rant about something. And we get some ranting questions, we get some praising questions. They're used to dealing with it all, and they are an amazing front line to have on there. But as you might guess, folks that are customer service who grew up in a call center environment aren't necessarily used to this digital environment. And so working very closely with them to kind of retread their skill set has been a critical point of success. Partnership with subject matter experts. Our subject matter experts within Kellogg's we have are great people. This is one, Paloma Lopez. She is one of our directors of sustainability. And so she helps work with farmers on increasing their sustainable agriculture practices. She also tells a really great story. So I've got sound here, right? I can play a video?
The biggest challenges, but also opportunities for Kellogg as well as for the food industry are greenhouse emissions, climate change, also water considerations, soil health, and ensuring that we can continue to grow foods in a way that is sustainable. We've had relationships with the farming community in Louisiana since the 1920s. When we first launched Rice Krispies, this is where we came and bought our rice.
Shannon from Lake Arthur, Louisiana, rice farmer. My dad's farmed for approximately 50 years. My grandfather was a farmer also. I appreciate Kellogg's sustainability program on recognizing the benefits of the rice industry. The program they are offering works hand in hand with the farmer, conserving energy and keeping the land in good condition.
We've recently shared our 2020 commitments. That includes sustainable agriculture support, water management support, and going back to simplicity. Farmers are real pros at what they do. We're not trying to change how they do things. We're trying to enable them to do better.
You try to improve the farm from year to year. You're always working for the future.
We have so much work to do, but we're excited to be in this journey, and we believe it's the right path, and we are hearing from people that this is very important to them. It's important that we listen.
So that's in a small way shows the importance of having your subject matter experts. Paloma and Shannon, the farmer, they're going to tell a story in a much better way than any PR person could. Now, we lucked out in that Paloma was very willing and excited to get on camera and tell these stories. Not everybody is, but that's okay. You know, we want to find those experts internally who can tell those stories and then make them comfortable along the way. Another element of the 8 steps that you need to do is new thinking on metrics. As I mentioned before, we have 50 plus different metrics that we're tracking for this program. We also are evolving how those metrics are. What we considered success at the launch and for the first 90 days, that's changed to where we are now. At first, it was, hey, we want to get as much traffic to the site as possible. We want the more people there asking more questions, that's great. Over time, though, we realized that, you know what, no, traffic is important, but that can't be the number one thing because we're never going to get as many people to our website as we will to our Facebook page. And so how do we use the website as that font, as that origin for this information, and then get it out in social in a way that if we push it across Twitter, if we push it across Facebook, these other platforms, that it drives a lot of excitement and engagement on that platform. And then if we get some people coming from, converting from Facebook to our website, that's great, but that's become a secondary benefit instead of our number one driver at this point. We also need to do a whole lot of training and education on what metrics are. Even within our digital analytics team, they're very used to working in one specific way, measuring digital for conversion, for purchase, and whatnot. This is not about conversion and purchase, so it's a very different language, it's a very different approach. Plus, I've had the benefit of getting support through all those different departments and areas that I mentioned before. But the bosses of all those departments want to know, okay, I volunteered Paloma to give you some time, now how's it performing? And then I need to communicate with those other leaders on, okay, you don't know anything about Facebook, but here's a number, and here's what this number means. And so I could tell them, yeah, you know what, we got 30 comments, and that's terrible. Or we got 30 comments, and that's awesome. And sometimes the awesome number is the terrible number, and vice versa. So a lot of patient conversation and always sharing numbers with context in it as well. So we talked about that already. Number 8 in the 11-step plan is the budget, and you need to have a paid media budget for this. If I was to break it down, most of my budget that I have, content production and then content distribution through paid. That's what the program is. That's what a lot of programs are now. Unfortunately, as the ConAgri guy was saying before, if you with the changes that Facebook made, if there's not ads behind your posts, it's not going to be seen by a whole lot of people. Now, on the plus side, you can use those ads in some very interesting ways to make new connections with people. And if you've got the right stories and the right targeting, then you can really do some interesting things as well. So let me show another video that is that demonstrates how we did some interesting things with targeting. There it is.
We know the difference that breakfast can make, in particular for kids in the classroom. Obviously, hunger is an enormous issue. And we saw the statistic that 1 in 5 children might go hungry each day. We knew we had to change that. So we focused first and foremost on the power of breakfast to make a difference in a hungry person's life. And who's most vulnerable in that equation? Children. As a mother of a little boy, the thought of sending my child to school hungry is almost something I can't even talk about. They go to school and they have an empty belly. They can't focus on their classroom and their classwork. They can't listen to the teacher. They're starting at a deficit before the day has even begun.
A large part of why we were so enthusiastic about having breakfast in the classroom was just trying to build those connections with the kids.
Good morning, Chan. How are you? Did you have a good night last night?
The ability for the kids to maintain their focus on their studies once we start our day has been a drastic turnaround. Every day they're getting a fruit, every day they're getting a grain, and they're getting dairy. And I always say to them, you know, when your tummies are full, your brains are ready to learn, so it's a really good start to our morning.
With Breakfast for Better Days, we will provide 1 billion servings of cereal and snacks to children around the world by the end of 2016.
Minus 9 equals 5. Whew. Do your brains feel woken up? Mine does too.
Any school district could benefit from breakfast in the classroom. It definitely starts the students out on the right path for their day.
I think we need a dance break. What do you guys say?
Dance break, dance break. So that's one of the stories that we wanted to tell. Obviously, it's a philanthropic campaign. Kellogg's is donating breakfast and materials and equipment to help school breakfast programs throughout the country. We've got a classroom full of really cute kids that will help with our content. We've got a good story to tell there. But it's not just about making the content really good. We also were very strategic in terms of how we use the budget for this. So when we put this on Facebook, we didn't say, hey, let's go to our fans, let's go to as big an audience as possible. We said, we want to target this to people who have identified themselves in their profiles and likes and interests as teachers, as PTA moms, as moms who are involved in school activities and programs like that. By focusing in on that pretty small target, we were able to not only get really good efficiency out of spend, we're able to get those influencers to really share our content. the comments on this that we got, so many people just thanking Kellogg's. People who'd never heard of this program saying, "Oh, that's awesome, Kellogg's. Thanks for doing that." And so it's just repackaging the story that we already have in a great way with some visuals of some really cute kids, because people love to share cute kid stuff on Facebook, and then some very strategic targeting as well. So those are some of the steps and things that we've had to do as an organization to be in a position where we can say, yes, we communicate transparently. Ask me anything. Ask us anything about cereal. We will tell you the answer to it. Want to know where the corn comes from? Want to know where the sugar comes from? Want to know why Fruit Loops are blue? Want to know the Fruit Loops bloopers are actually not a blooper? It was the intended thing. We can answer all those questions, and typically within 24 hours. Now let's shift a little bit. As individuals, what are some of the things that I would suggest that I've had to do in my personal career to be better suited to this transparency type and rapid response mindset? So one is develop a sense of skeptical optimism. And what I mean by that is I'm a very optimistic person, but I've also tried to train myself to not necessarily take the first answer that people have. So you could be a skeptimist and always try to be, look for the silver lining there, but I'm more okay, I think things are generally good. I'll hear an answer, but I'm gonna go back that up. I'm gonna go check that in a different way. And I have a story later that will illustrate that. You need to be willing to push the envelope. That's one thing when I started at Kellogg's, I would start a lot of meetings with, "Hi, I'm the new guy, so I get to say some really weird things that are dumb and probably will annoy people, but that's also kind of why I was hired, because I'm here to push the envelope." And then you also have to challenge any and all corporate speak. Even a small company is going to have its acronyms, it's going to have its little phrases and things. You got to get rid of those, because the more you talk like you're a company, the less authenticity that you'll have. Going back to the Brella work before, if it sounds like a company, your authenticity is going to start to suffer immediately. You need to tone your storytelling muscle. Even though I work with a great agency who produces great work, I still like to get out and write my own tweets and write my own stories as well. The videos I showed before, great pieces, obviously pretty high production value there. This is an article that I wrote by myself. I sound proud, all by my little lonesome. I can still write articles. I wrote this article and I shot a picture with my iPhone, and it turned into one of our best pieces. Now, the story here, these are 3 food developers at Kellogg's. Now, the job of a food developer is they take an idea and then turn it into a recipe that we can then produce at a large scale to turn into literally millions and millions of boxes of cereal. So, I don't know if anybody's seen one of our new lines of cereals called Origins. If you've not seen it, it's really good. Go buy it. I don't have coupons, but just pretend I gave you one and go get some today. But Origins is a new type of cereal as well, because it's got quinoa, it's got walnuts, it's got kamut and amaranth and all these other very interesting and kind of new trendy types of grains in them. And so these 3 folks were charged with, all right, well, we know quinoa is really popular and it's really good for you and it's got lots of protein. And these other grains are called super grains because they have lots of nutritious qualities as well. So how do we take that and turn it into a cereal that will actually taste good? Because if it doesn't taste good, it doesn't matter how nutritious it is, people aren't gonna eat it. And so I found out about this story and I go talk to them. And the first answer I got was, well, the food developer people, they just follow they follow this process. There's nothing interesting there. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, I get it, but I'm gonna go talk to him anyway. So I sit down and Ed, the guy on the left there, I said, well, tell me about your job. And he goes, I got the best job in the world. I get to play around in the kitchen and I get paid for it. I'm like, wow, that's our winning soundbite. Okay, that's the lead for the story, and let's go from there. And now this story, just posted as one of our new things, tells about, well, what is the process to go from an idea into millions of boxes of cereal in production? So and that's something that it took some effort on our part, but in terms of costs, agency was barely involved, cost us next to nothing. And the reason I bring that up is that when you're developing your different storytelling muscle, yeah, sometimes we're gonna do a nice, fancy, classy video on things. Other times it's gonna be, no, let's just sit down in a room, we can bang something out quickly. It doesn't have to necessarily be high production stories to really get your point across, especially if you're a big corporation. then something else you need to do is make others comfortable with the change as well. So when I sat down with the food developers, great bunch of folks, but first time you meet somebody, you got to break the ice a little bit. So I said, hey, do you guys want to be internet famous? Like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm going to put you online, or we're going to put your faces on Facebook for Kellogg's. We could maybe even make a meme out of you guys. And they're like, yeah, that sounds cool. And so just something like that was light, was meant to break the ice a little bit, but it got them more involved and more excited about the project as well. So something else that helps in terms of making people comfortable is to reground all your conversations that you have internally with your clients and with your coworkers about the consumer. Okay, so again, when we're talking with the developers about the origin story, something else I told them is like, hey, on this platform, Open for Breakfast, we're getting hundreds of questions. I've gotten, in the past month, we've gotten 20 questions of people just saying, hey, I think Origins is great. What else is in it? What's coming next? And so I get to stoke their professional pride a little bit and saying, hey, I heard something good about the work that you're doing, and here's what it is. Building your ambassadors for telling your story. I mentioned before, CEO is not necessarily the most trusted person when it comes to the public perception of your organization. So finding those other folks, so Ed the food developer, Paloma, I wish I had 20 of them because I could use as many as possible because we're getting more questions every day and they're more complex questions, so we need more people to answer them. Within Kellogg's, there's a hierarchy, as there is within every organization. You need to understand what the hierarchy is so you can navigate between all those different departments and conversations. You also need to know when to jump it. That's a dangerous thing, but I like to think I'm less than a year in, so I still have my newbie card I can play. So if I do something really, really bad or ask a dumb question to the wrong person, I can say, oh, sorry, newbie mistake. I think I only get that for a year or so, but it's a nice thing to have. Always check with your boss. Make sure you got top cover. Make sure that she knows, yeah, I'm cool with you going and asking that dumb question to that person, just to push something along. And then you got to thank people. Every time I work with somebody internally to get a new story done, I send them a thank you. I send them a link to it when it's posted. It's a small thing, but it's really, really important because it shows that you're valuing the people's efforts. And when consumers ask us questions through the site, those hundreds of questions that we're getting, every day, every week, every month, even if it's a tough question, even if someone says, I think you're terrible because you have GMO corn. Say, oh, well, okay, thanks for your question. We appreciate it. Even if it's not an easy question, we do thank everybody for their things there. So I'll leave you with one last thing, too, on this. When it comes to this discussion, we're being transparent. We're opening up about who we are as a company, how our food is made. That doesn't happen without risk. And yeah, there are people who aren't going to necessarily like the story. But what we've seen, and I saw this at Kellogg's, I also saw this at McDonald's as well, the mere act of letting people ask questions, of being open, is making a difference in terms of the people who don't like us, the haters that are out there. Did some survey work. Even when people don't like the answer that they get back from our programs, if someone who's very non-GMO and says, hey, I don't like it, we're still getting, our trust scores are still going up with them. Now, why is that so? Well, they may not like the answer, but they appreciate and give us credit for being willing to answer the question in the first place. So when it's all said and done, putting yourselves out there, it does have some risk, but the reward is there, especially even with those haters as well.